Welcome in, everyone, to the Wrestling is Awesome podcast with Alec Pecano. Joining me is Bradley Walker. We are part of the NGSC Sports Network. You know the website, ngscsports.com. Tonight's show, we are going over our review of AEW Dynamite, as well as talking about some other things going on in AEW. There was some big releases that we will get into in this show from AEW that we had previously talked about, but we're going to start with our Dynamite review. And I'm going to say this is the best Dynamite that I've seen in the last probably 2 or 3 years.
It was a very good show.
It was. We were supposed to do a watch along, but we had to move it to next week because Bradley was under the weather.
Yeah, I ate something that just did not agree with me, and it was coming out both ends. I didn't think you wanted to see that live on the air. So,
anyway, let's get started with Dynamite. It opened with Max Caster in a one-on-one match with Hangman Page, and I'm sorry, I liked Max Caster when he was in the Acclaimed, but this whole best wrestler alive thing he's doing now is just it doesn't move the needle for me. I don't know about you.
No, it doesn't, bud. I mean, you're right. You're right about what you said. I mean, I don't know if they're trying to get him away from what he was doing to what he's doing now, but it's not working. It's not working,
as both of us can obviously see.
But it's Tony Khan, so
And then he had a match with Hangman Page, and Hangman Page made it look. I'm sorry to say, Hangman Page made it look effortless in their match, and
that he did.
I feel bad for Caster, but at the same time, I don't. He kept running his mouth, and we'll get to another guy that keeps running his mouth later, and I think everybody knows who we're probably talking about. But
what his initials start with M? Would it
MJF? We'll talk about him later.
Wow.
But so then we have the. So then we get to the. I think it wasn't the Death Riders. That's later on in the show. You have the notes in front of you, correct?
It looks like, Bud, that Ricochet. Yeah, it says Ricochet Bud delivered a confident promo on Swerve Strickland after his win.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Tried to convince the mogul to move on from winning.
We talked about this last week. How we thought this feud wasn't.
Didn't we talk about?
Yes, we did.
Same thing.
Yep, we did. We talked about how we thought this feud wasn't over. I don't think it's over. Not even close. I think this feud's just getting started.
And you were talking, I think we were talking last week, but about how if they wanted to get real, dirty, you would have Ricochet cut Prince Nana on his robe. I mean, with the scissors, he carries scissors. That would be something that we could go. If they want to go down that road to keep the rivalry on the path that it's on, that could be something they could go to. But that'd be pretty bad. But they could go that route if they wanted to. So
I wouldn't be surprised if they end up going that route at some point. Then you had, was it? No, I think then you had the trios. Was it the? I'm pretty sure it was the trios.
But yeah, that's what I have next. But the trio championship.
I have
Death Riders against Undisputed Kingdom.
It was a good match. other than, of course, we knew the Death Riders weren't going to win in your traditional way. We knew, both of us knew that they were going to cheat.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how they, how do we put it? That's how they run their group. They don't win in the correct way. They cheat to win, which is unacceptable in my book. But then again, that's why we have a podcast and we're not booking Dynamite every week.
I agree.
If we were, we would book it better than Tony Khan. Sorry, Tony, but there's some things that neither of us.
I agree.
I don't think that feud's over either between Undisputed Kingdom and the Death Riders. Then we had backstage segment with Cope and Jay White, if I'm not mistaken.
No, but correct if I'm wrong. This might,
you keep going in and going out. You're
yeah. Death Riders. Yes. Behind Rider since November. Yeah.
Yeah, you keep. No, I can hear you, but you keep like freezing and then unfreezing. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. But but you were talking about the backstage thing. That did happen afterwards.
Yeah, it was Cope and.
Let me pull my notes on my. Yeah.
Yeah, Cope had the briefcase.
Pull my notes up on my phone. Correct.
Yeah, Cope had the briefcase, and he and Jay White basically told Moxley to meet him in the ring by the end of the night. And we'll get into that toward the end of the recap because I don't want to spoil it, but I think somebody folded under pressure. Not going to say the name yet, but I think somebody folded under pressure. And I used to talk to the person that folded under pressure, and that's not the kind of person he is. But and I can see Bradley knows who I am referring to. But we will talk about that in a second. Then we had was it women's? I think it was 2 women's matches.
Let me see, bud. Yeah, hang on a minute. Let me see. Yeah, it was Megan Bayne and Mayla World.
Yep, and Megan Bayne won.
Correct.
I'm gonna call. I'm sorry. To me, that was a squash match. There was. They're just trying to build what they were saying on the, because I just rewatched it this morning. What they were saying is they're trying to build Megan Bayne back up since she's been gone from AEW a while. And then you had Penelope Ford against Chris Statlander.
Correct. That was the other one, bud. Yes. Yep.
And you know what? That was a better match than I thought it was going to be. But of course, we both knew that. I think we both probably knew that Chris Statlander was going to win.
Yes, it says she F5. Wow. That's cool. That's cool. I thought Brock Lesnar was the only one that did F5. That's pretty cool. Okay. Cool beans.
And then you had the tag team title match. Well, no, then you had Harley Cameron doing a concert.
Yeah. Correct. That's I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah. A concert, you're correct.
Oh, Tony Khan. This is what I mean. What was the point of this segment? We all know that Mercedes Moné is not losing Saturday. As much as both of us would love to see that, there ain't no chance in that it happens.
She needs to drop that name and just come back to WWE and be Sasha Banks. Come on now. It's just come on now. Come on now.
It does. Well, and then you know what? We can also go over the card for Grand Slam Australia later on too.
Cool.
But so then we get to the main event. The Hurt Syndicate against the Guns.
Correct.
Overall, I thought it was a good match. Well, the co-main event, because the main event was Cope.
MJF. Yeah, Cope. The warning that he gave. I saw the warning on YouTube earlier. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and then we could talk about MJF in a second. He's not very important to either of us. Sorry, Maxwell, but you got to earn your respect, and you haven't. Anyway, I overall I thought it was a good match, but to those people that thought the Guns were going to win, and for a little bit I was one of them, but I'm like, there's no way they're putting the titles back on the Guns right after they just came back last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think down the road, yes, they will probably put the titles on Colton and Austin Gunn, which I did not like them when they were in the Bang Bang game with Jay White, but since they came back, I've changed my perception on them. I actually like them. And then now, before we talk about Cope and Mr. Moxley, we're going to talk about MJF. and both of us, we've talked about this numerous times, how we're going to get to his match with Dustin Rhodes in a second, but his promo, oh my God. Does it get, to me, I feel like it gets worse every week. His promos he does.
I agree with you. I agree.
Every week they get worse. Like it's the same old stuff. And then of course he takes the low road to beat Dustin Rhodes.
Yes.
Which just it made me like ultra upset. I'm like, come on, can you at least try to halfway win without cheating? Obviously not, because
I think, but he's the ultimate heel in that company, so and
then you know what? I have a gripe to pick with Nigel McGuinness. Nigel McGuinness calling MJF a generational talent. You have to earn that. I'm not going to say nickname, but you have to earn that tag. Has MJF earned that tag?
I don't.
Not in my book.
Not in my
book. There's only maybe one or two people in AEW that you could call generational. I would have said Ricky Starks, but we'll get to him in a second. Because he showed up in NXT the other night.
Mm-hmm.
And then right now, the only one in AEW that I would say is generational, and I know this is going to ruffle some feathers, Daniel Garcia. And then we have MJF. No. Samoa Joe, Shibata, and Hook.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a trios match against, I'm sorry to say, 3 jobbers that stood absolutely zero chance. Poor guys. I felt bad for them. And then they Joe cut a promo after the match, and I guess their name of their trio is the Ops, and they want a match with Mr. Patriarchy leader Christian Cage. Both of us know Christian Cage is a pretty hard guy to find.
Mm-hmm.
Because he hides behind his little cronies, Nick Wayne and Kip Sabian. Do we think this match is actually going to happen? I'm going to say yes, but it's going to take a lot for it to happen because I think that Christian Cage is going to put it off until he absolutely needs to say yes.
Right. Or until he's forced to Cope to Moxley. So yeah.
Oh yeah, until he's forced to, like Coke did to, as we'll get into in a second. And then there was already a match announced for next week that we will get to see because we are doing a watch along next Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm.
MJF versus Hangman Adam Page.
And I think, didn't I mention last week that I thought that there was a rivalry between those two that could start soon? So,
and I'm sorry to say this, I think MJF is jealous of Hangman. Because MJF is obsessed with trying to get the AEW World Title back. MJF, you need to be nowhere. Realistically, you need to be nowhere near that title. You haven't earned it. There's lot of other.
Well, I was going to say, I think because of his ego, he thinks that when he loses or he's out of the title picture, he can just come back and they're going to hand him a title match. You know what I mean? Like, there are some people in the business that are like that. A lot of people said that Hulk Hogan was like that. He'd go away for a while and come back. Okay, I want my title back. No, you have to step in line and wait like everyone else does and work your way back up. So obviously he thinks he's entitled. That's what I was looking for. He's entitled. Or he thinks he's entitled, should I say.
Yeah. And then you have I just don't get MJF. It's like you said, he thinks he's entitled to a rematch for his title that he claims he wrongfully lost. It's called 1, you got hurt. 2, you got stripped of the title because you were hurt and gone. Which there's somebody else that's been gone for a while that I feel like we haven't talked about because he hasn't been showing up for work. No, I'm not talking about the Young Bucks.
We talked about them last week.
I'm talking about Jack Perry. Where are you at, Jack Perry? You need to show up for work. So anyway, what's your grade for Dynamite for this past week?
Out of 10, I'm gonna say 7.5, 8. It was a pretty good show. There was a lot of, obviously,
storylines being
correct. And I'm a big Edge fan. Cope, whatever he calls
Oh,
himself.
we didn't get to that. Let's talk about that. So the main event comes around and Cope is in the ring with the briefcase. He's like, Moxley, I'm giving you two options. One, I take Spike out and I have Spike break open the case. Or two, you come out here and give me a world title match at Revolution. And sure enough, Moxley folds and ends up giving Cope a title match at Revolution. And I'm sorry, I don't buy anything Moxley said in his promo. How he loves AEW and he adores having that championship. I don't know about you, but I don't believe it for 1 second.
No, I know, again, he was another one of those guys similar to CM Punk who left and went to AEW. Oh, here's I'm never going to go back and all this stuff. And now that I think CM Punk has gone back to WWE, and now that Vince McMahon is no longer, I know we're talking about AEW, Vince McMahon's not no longer in charge. It's now Triple H. Things have changed. So I could see Jon Moxley coming back to WWE as well as Monet as well. But that's a different story. But yeah, I don't believe that either. I don't believe that either.
And then he had Marina Shafir go in the ring and get the briefcase after it had already been demolished, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Moxley, I'm going to say this. I think Moxley's playing with fire. Because at the end of the promos, he said he wants to break Adam Copeland's neck.
Be careful what you wish for, buddy. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because we've seen Cope in the past. I think there's one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to anger the man because
no. Just ask Christian what happens when you anger him.
I was going to say, ask Christian Cage exactly what happens when you upset Cage or upset Cope. I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The thing I found weird, where were Dax and Cash? We didn't see them at all.
Mm-mm.
All we saw was Cope and Jay White. Like, I'm confused. Maybe they were off doing as people like to say in the wrestling world, maybe they were off doing a side quest. That's the phrase I get online on like TikTok and all these social medias all the time from people. They're like, "Oh, this person's off doing a side quest," and I'm just like, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, maybe they're taking time off." And now, if you could pull up the Grand Slam Australia card, and we can go over each match and who we think.
Let me do that right now. So the first one that I see is the AEW Women's World Championship between Mariah May and Toni Storm. Is the first one.
Well, you're forgetting a key thing at the beginning of Toni Storm's name. She is back to being timeless. Toni Storm.
Okay.
That whole thing where she was playing, like acting like she was a rookie. That was a ruse.
Okay.
It was part of her character to eventually come back and say that she was actually timeless Toni Storm. Who do you have winning this match?
I'm gonna say Toni. I'm gonna say the challenger upsets the champion.
I can see that. I'm also gonna go Toni Storm, But I think this is going to be a really good match because both of these girls know each other very well. They used to be a team before Mariah May turned her back on Tony Storm. And we know how tag teams turned rivals end up just look. I know it's WWE, but look at the Shield. Look at when Rollins turned heel against Ambrose and Roman Reigns.
You could look at the Usos as well.
Mm-hmm. That's the example I'm using here for this match. I think it's going to be. I'm going to say probably a 4.5 star match out of 5.
Okay.
And Tony Storm ends up winning by a roll up. What is the next match?
The next match, Bud, is Adam Copeland and Switchblade Jay White versus John Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli, if I'm pronouncing that
Castagnoli.
In a Brisbane brawl. That's the next one that's listed down.
So, I really want to pick Cope and Jay White, but I feel like this match fits Moxley and Castagnoli very well. Because as we've seen, they don't quite like to follow the rules.
Well, I was just about to say it, but I think what's going to end up happening is Moxley's going to do something to Cope to further escalate their title match. So, yes, I'm going to do the same pick with you. I'm going to take Moxley and his partner to win.
I'm going to take Moxley and Castagnoli, unfortunately, even though I'd love to see Cope and Jay White win because that's a tag team I never thought I would see, and a tag team I never thought that I would actually know. Because, like I said, I used to not really care for Jay White, but now, since he's come back from injury, I've came over to the bright side and saw that Jay White's actually really good. But yeah, I'm taking Moxley and Castagnoli because they're gonna do something to Cope and Jay White to maybe further escalate not only the title match that Cope has at Revolution, but the rivalry they have with Jay White and Cope.
Mm-hmm. The next match, Bud, is Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay versus.
Oh, I'm taking Omega and Ospreay.
Okay.
Right.
Takahashi and Fletcher are the two that are in that match. Yeah, I'll agree with that. As we've talked about, I think in the past couple weeks on here, I think those two are starting to become a pretty powerful tag team, and I would be fearful if you're standing across the ring from those two. But that's just
I agree. I would be really scared of the two of them because, as Omega said to Mark Davis last week, there are people in the locker room that you can actually trust. And I have a theory that Mark Davis was paid a lot of money by the Don Callis family to try to take out Will Ospreay.
I agree because they've had their run-ins with each other. I agree.
Well, and what a lot of people don't realize is Mark Davis, Will Ospreay, and Kyle Fletcher used to be a faction. They used to be the Aussie Open. Until Kyle Fletcher turned his back on Will Ospreay. Which they did have a match at one of the previous pay-per-views. I don't think that rivalry's over yet. But that's me. But I am going to take Ospreay and Omega like you are. What is the next match on the card?
The AEW Continental Championship between Okada, who's the champion, and Buddy Matthews is the challenger.
As much as I'd love to see Buddy Matthews win, does Tony Khan pull a fast one on us here and have a title change hands?
That would be cool. I mean, obviously, we both have Tony
Well,
Storm
and here there's
here. But yeah,
there's a backstory to this. Take a guess at where Buddy Matthews is from.
Australia.
Yep. It would
Just
make
like,
all the sense. It would make all the sense in the world for Buddy
like
Matthews to win. Yep.
Just like Rhea Ripley when she won in Australia. Yep. Home country. Yep.
It would make all the sense in the world for Buddy Matthews to win. And I want him to win, but I feel like Okada feels like that heel to me, that he can play the mean guy, but he can also play the tweener role and be a baby face. But I want, as much as I want Buddy Matthews to win, I think it's going to be Okada. But I think this is going to be a heck of a match. I honestly do. Who's your pick?
I'm gonna go with the countryman. I'm gonna go with Buddy Matthews. I think, again, being that it's his home country, I think he wins the title to celebrate with his, what do they call them? Mates. That's what they call them in Australia.
Mates.
Mates. I have
a
friend of mine who listens to my show, and that's what he says. He goes, "Hey, mate, it's Friday in Australia." It's Thursday here, but it's Friday in Australia. But yeah, I'm going to go with Buddy Matthews.
And then it's TBS title, Mercedes Moné and
Harley Cameron.
I'd love to see Harley Cameron win, but the way they've been building up Mercedes Moné, it just tells me that Mercedes Moné is going to win.
Yeah, I know this is a pay-per-view for AEW, but as we know, not every title changes hands on pay-per-view. So no, I agree with you. I think Monet continues to be the TBS champion
and keep all of her belts, which is absurd. She's got 4 belts.
Oh wow, yeah.
Who is that? All the matches, or is there?
That's all that I see, bud. This is on SB Nation, but the cageSideSeat.com thing. I don't see anything else. Hang on a minute, bud. Just before I say that, to make sure that those are all the matches that
have been announced.
Yeah, we've got the Glamour Mariah May versus the Timeless Tony Storm, Moxley, Cope, Omega Ospreay, Okada. Yeah, those are the only matches, bud, that I see so far that have been booked. I want to say they said something about Jericho, but I don't see anything about Jericho having a match at Grand Slam. So
I wouldn't be. Oh, and that's the other thing is, let's go back to Dynamite for a second. And let's talk about that whole segment with Chris Jericho putting a bounty out on Bandito. we talk about Jericho all the time and how he just needs to hang up the boots and retire.
Yep.
And then you had, so that whole segment just, I don't know if it felt rushed, but it just felt like it was a nothing segment. Other than Will Hobbs doing a spine buster on Big Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the in my notes too about that. But that has to do with the Callis family, right? Too? Does that all fit into that?
No. Learning Tree is.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Wrong faction, guys. I'm sorry. I got the wrong faction. The Learning Tree is the one I was referring to. Yeah.
Yes, Learning Tree is Chris Jericho, Brian Keith, and Big Bill. And Big Bill was about to cash in the bounty on Bandito before Powerhouse Hobbs music hit. That feud, those two, I don't think their feud's over.
I agree.
So now we're going to talk about maybe some other future feuds that we want to see and some other news around AEW. And the first bit of news is there was 3 guys released from their AEW contracts. And one of them we've talked about for the last 2 weeks. Because he might
Aleister Black.
Yep, because he might be involved in a storyline in WWE right now, and that would be Malachi Black.
Mm-hmm.
He was officially, well, no, he's officially a free agent now.
Correct.
And then the 2 guys that were released, one of them already showed up on, as we kind of referenced earlier. He showed up on NXT Tuesday night, Ricky Starks, which if we had an editor, we could do a little flashback because we talked about it at least 3 times that we think Ricky Starks was going to end up in WWE at some point.
Yes, we did.
And then the last one, and I think AEW completely dropped the ball with this guy, Miro.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Miro was released from his AEW contract.
Just come back
And
to WWE.
under the name Rusev. I
Rusev,
don't think AEW has non-compete clauses for their wrestlers. But I do think Rusev is going, I think Miro is going to come back to WWE. I don't know when.
Could you see him, Bud, going to TNA to kind of get his name out first?
People,
and then
you know what? There was people that put that idea out there. And I mean, right now there's not a lot of gumption with that, but I could, you know what? Yeah. I could see Miro going to TNA first, and he would still be able to come to WWE.
correct,
Because they have their partnership.
Yeah, so my thought is he goes to TNA, gets his name again up, and then you see him at SummerSlam or Bad Blood or whatever, a WWE pay-per-view. He just appears and helps somebody lose a title or win a title or whatever it might be. But I could see something like that for him coming back. Yeah,
I could too. Well, and then obviously, so we know that it looks like Ricky Starks is probably going to be on NXT for a little bit because, and yes, we are talking about AEW, but we're going to try to mix a little bit of WWE into. So, Triple H apparently has plans already planned out through WrestleMania for people on the main roster, people in NXT, and signings that are going to happen. And that's the other thing we can talk about is the guys that got released from WWE and where we think they'll land. But and you know what? I could see if Aleister Black doesn't come back to WWE, which I think he will, I could see him going to TNA.
I agree. I think besides NXT, because NXT is kind of like the future, of the company. But I think for people that are out of AEW, go to TNA, get some pizzazz behind your name, and then you're right back on the main roster because you have the partnership with WWE, so you could come over and vice versa. So I could see that happening. I agree with you.
I could too. So there was some releases from WWE last week. And the one that really surprised me was Cedric Alexander.
Yeah, I have the list put of the ones that got released. Yeah.
Do you see after his 90-day non-compete clause ends, do you see him going to AEW
Yes.
to
Yes, I
be in
do.
the Hurt Syndicate with
Hmm?
Shelton, Bobby, and MVP?
Yeah. No, that would be perfect. That is a perfect role for Cedric Alexander. Yep.
Because it felt like when he was with MVP, Lashley, and Shelton in WWE, he was getting shown on Raw every week.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Electra Lopez got released, which I don't know what to think about that because she wasn't really wrestling. She was more of a manager.
That could be why, bud. I mean, that could be why. But then I see Sonya Deville's name on this list. Was she wrestling too, or was she just a manager?
Yes, she was in PFC,
Okay.
Pure Fusion Collective with Zoe Stark and Shayna, which people were not happy that Sonya Deville got released. They thought that Sonya Deville should not have gotten released.
Mm.
I here's the thing. I kind of knew that faction wasn't gonna last. But Triple H or anybody at WWE, if you're watching this, please repackage Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler because both of them could be world champions.
Absolutely. I could see who's the one, bud, that just came in from TNA.
Jordan Grace.
I could see the three of them having a feud with each other, like the three of them or Jordan Grace going after. I think that would be perfect for her to kind of get her feet wet in the WWE. I know she doesn't have to do that. She doesn't have to prove herself. She's already done that already. But I could see something like that with Jordan Grace and Baszler and Stark, kind of, or maybe they make a big 3 women tag team and just destroy the women's division. Who knows? Triple H will.
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't mind that. So out of all the releases, who ends up in AEW? Obviously, we just talked about Cedric Alexander. We think he's going to end up in AEW. Who else is on the list?
I have the Authors of Pain.
Do you think they end up in AEW with Paul Ellering?
I was gonna say he's the next one that I had on my list, but it was Paul Ellering. Yes, I do. I do.
I also agree with that. I think they will get an opportunity in somewhere, either AEW, TNA, maybe New Japan, somewhere.
Yeah.
You know who I'm, before we get back to the list, you know who I'm surprised wasn't released? Omos.
And he's a tag team champion in New Japan, right? But
Nope, he dropped his tag team title.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yep, because he was coming back to WWE, and I guess they have no plan for him right now.
Yeah, if Cedric Alexander didn't get released, if Omos got released, I could see him going to the Hurt Syndicate. That would be what's like ideal for Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. So yeah.
Who And then, so AOP and Paul Ellering, yes, for joining AEW. Electra Lopez, yes or no on going to AEW?
I'm going to say no because, again, I think the whole thing with her just being a manager, if she was wrestling, it'd be a different story. But, I mean, yeah, I could see her. I mean, I know she's been released from the WWE. I could see her going to TNA and being a manager there in all reality.
Or working on her in-ring skills,
Could do that too.
turning herself in TNA and turning herself into a good wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe she gets, once her TNA contract's up, if she does go to TNA and she improves, maybe WWE gives her an offer, or maybe at that point, AEW.
Yep. At that point, she would have earned that spot back. Yeah.
Where do you see Sonya Deville going? Does she seem like an AEW kind of?
Well, I guess my question with her, Bud, is where does she fit in AEW? You go after Monet. She go after Tony Storm. I mean, who does she go after? You know what I mean? Like,
Or does she form a faction with like younger talent
that could
on
be.
AEW?
That could be. You could go. That's a good plan for her. Yeah.
Who else was on that list?
Blair Davenport is the next one.
Okay, I have a gripe with this one. Why was she released? She just got called up to the main roster.
Good question. Did she get injured or something? Is there an injury?
No.
Or I don't know.
And I don't blame. This is the one people thought was like just bonkers. They're like, why is she getting released? She did nothing wrong. And I feel like she's going to end up in AEW.
Yeah.
She just feels like the perfect AEW superstar to me.
I agree.
And then the other one that was puzzling was Alba. Is it Alba Fire? No. Isla Dawn.
Isla Dawn.
Isla Dawn of Unholy Union. Why? She's in a tag team with Alba Fire. What are they gonna do with Alba Fire now? Her tag team partner was just released.
Good question. That's a good question.
Isla Dawn feels like another one to me that that would fit right in AEW.
Mm-hmm.
And then was there any more?
There were 3 more, Bud. You had Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, which the question.
The writing on the wall was kind of there.
I was gonna say
because they sent him down to NXT to kind of put over the younger audience and the tag teams that were up and coming. So when they did that, I'm like, okay, their days are probably numbered. They're probably gonna get released. And then who is the last one? They feel like another team that could go to
NXT, to AEW. Yeah.
AEW to be with Kenny Omega.
Yeah. Yep.
Because they used to be a team when before the Good Brothers came back to WWE the second time, they were a tag team in like a group in TNA. And that's when I couldn't stand Kenny Omega. But as you see now, I am as people like to say, they use this phrase loosely. I am the biggest Kenny Omega mark you will find on the internet. I love Kenny Omega. But yeah, I can see the Good Brothers going to AEW. And then the last one was
Giovanni Vinci.
Vinci.
Yeah.
And people are ticked off at Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser because they feel like both of them ruined Giovanni Vinci's career by kicking him out of Imperium. He feels like somebody to me that might give it a try in TNA before maybe going over to AEW.
Yeah, I could see that.
But I think that's going to wrap it up tonight for the Wrestling is Awesome podcast. Little programming note. As you know, we are part of the NGSC Sports Network, but we will not have a show next Tuesday. Next Monday morning at 11 a.m., we will have our first off-season college football podcast episode. It'll be our way too early standings predictions for the SEC and the Big Ten, and giving our thoughts on some of the new head coaches going into 2025 in college football. Remember to like, subscribe, and share the podcast, and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and go check out the NGSC Sports Network. For Alec and Bradley, we are signing off.
Good night, everybody.
We will see you Monday.